Welcome back to part 5 of our marble class. Today we're going to be dealing with the reflections and the water that's on the table underneath the marbles. This is all about value. So we're starting under the second marble. The first marble we have already painted, and I'm adding 308 palm green under this marble, and I'm just coloring it in, and then I'm going to darken it. It's always about value, which is the degree of darkness and light. Now I'm going to use my emerald green Carbothello pastel pencil, which is number 530, to add additional color. I can also, instead of using palm green, use Carbothello 575 leaf green, which is basically the same color. And as we get closer to the base, or up underneath the marbles, I'm going to use Carbothello 750 to deepen the color. Here I'm using the 750 right up under the marble for the deepest shadow color. Here I'm using 575 Carbothello and the gray, which is Carbothello 704. Now I'm adding more gray color with a Rembrandt pastel, but I can also add gray with the 704 Carbothello pencil. Now after filling in that area, I'm blending it with my little blender, smoothing in the color. This is just a Rembrandt 704.7 light gray color. It's not on your color list. because I decided that using pencils would work just as well. So it's up to you, whatever you have on hand. Now I'm going to go over this gray with my 575 leaf green Carbothello pencil. I'm just kind of glazing green lightly over it to tint it to a green-gray color, because that water that's on the table is picking up all the reflections of the different colors of the marbles. You can also see me cleaning up the edge of my pastel, of the pastel that goes over the line. You can do that with a tri-top plastic eraser or with a kneaded eraser. I'm outlining the light reflection of the water with my 100 Carbothello white pencil, and I'm going to fill that in. And then at the base of that reflection, I'm going to add some blue. And I'm going to do that with a Rembrandt 570.9 phthalo blue. So I'm putting in the white, and then I'll put in the blue. It's slightly off the screen, but I'm using the Conte blue number 10 to color that a little bit darker on the edge. You'll be able to see it more in our next segment. And I'm blending it with my finger. I'm evening up my edges with my Carbothello 704 gray. And I'm adding a bit of white to the edge because water has it has shape and volume to it, so it rolls down on the edge and picks up a little light. So we're going to be real careful of those nuances, and that will make it look like water underneath the marbles. I'm continuing to work on this reflection on the green marble. I'm using 308 NuPastel Palm Green to add color to the shape. Putting in some gray with my Carbothello 704 gray pencil. Then I'm blending it really well with my little tiny blender. Here I'm using my 440 Carbothello Sky Blue pencil to blend over the green and into that light area in the middle of the reflection. I'm darkening the green with a Pitt pastel pencil, number 165 Juniper Green. Adding a bit of that underneath as well. And I'm going to blend that with my little blender. I'm adding some more green with Pitt Pastel 174 Chrome Green. And a little bit of emerald green with my Carbothello pastel pencil, number 530. We'll blend these together with the blender. continuing to use the Pitt pencil number 165 to add darker green to the shape. And by using 750 Carbothello Black, I can go a little darker by just glazing that black color over the green and blending it with my finger. I'm filling in the little shape on the left with Carbothello 440 Sky Blue. And I'm glazing over the blue with the white pencil, and then I'll blend it with my finger. I'm adding these darker lines with the Carbothello Emerald Green pencil, which is 530. And a little highlight with the Carbothello White. Now these shapes in the center of the reflection, I'm going to color in the brightest highlights with the Carbothello 100. I'm using Rembrandt 100.5 white soft pastel to make them a little bit brighter. Just using the edge. Now here are the selection of pencils that I'm using at the moment. Here they are again with the emerald green added to the selection of pencils. I'm using Palm Green NuPastel to color under the blue marble as we move across the painting. I'm going around the light blue shape and just carefully coloring in with the palm green. Now I'm going to add the 440 Carbothello Sky Blue. And then I'm going to blend it all together with my little blender. I'm going over the edges of this with the 704 Carbothello gray pencil. And blend things well with your blender. Use a dark blue NuPastel, or I prefer a 151 Pitt Prussian blue to add the dark blue color under the blue marble. And then next to that, I'm going to use Viridian Matte Carbothello 590 to blend that color together and into the palm green color that we added previously. And then I'll use my blender to further blend the colors together. Edge of the reflection right next to the marble with the yellow center, I'm going to add my Rembrandt 590.9 Phthalo Blue. Now I'm working these reflections as I paint the entire marble picture. During the rest of these videos, we painted the marbles and then we went back and added the reflections at the same time. But I thought it would be easier if we talked all about the water and reflections in the same video. I'm going to add highlights with my Rembrandt 100.5 white soft pastel. Add the irregular highlights and shapes that you see with the 100 Carbothello pencil. I'm glazing a little bit of white color right next to that, lightening up the area and blending it with my finger. Now I'm using my Pitt Pastel pencil, number 165, Juniper Green, to go over that green and darken it a little bit. I'm using the Phthalo Blue 570.9 again to add a little brighter blue next to the green marble. The same pastel, the 570.9 Phthalo Blue, I'm adding blue into the reflection of the green marble over the white highlights that we put in earlier. I'll blend those with my finger. Here I'm using the yellow-orange Conte pencil number 37 to add some color into the reflection. This orangey yellow color comes from the portions of the green marble that's sitting in the water, but also is reflected from the yellow marble that's right to the left. I'm adding a little more green color here with 575 Carbothello Leaf Green. And darkening that with 590 Carbothello Viridian Matte. I'm brightening the reflections with Carbothello 100, pushing in a medium hard fashion. I am outlining some light reflections with 100 Carbothello pencils. Now, under the yellow marble, I have added Carbothello 75 leaf green, darkened with Pitt Pastel number 165 juniper green, and used 100 Carbothello to add white highlights. I've also used some Carbothello 575 leaf green to add further color if I need it. I've also done that under the blue marble, and now I'm adding some white reflections. Up under the blue marble, I have colored the shadow with Pitt 165 juniper green and darkened it with 750 Carbothello black. So I'm just outlining these little highlights with my pencil. I'm using my Carbothello 440 to shade some of the white shapes with the sky blue color. I've also used my 100.5 Rembrandt to add more color as needed. Here I've switched to a different pencil, which is the Carbothello 435 Ultramarine Blue Light. It's a cooler light, and I felt that the painting needed that in this area. It's also lighter than the 440. So I'm going to be using it as we move forward in the picture plane. I'm using it to draw little lines into the white areas, which really is a reflection of window panes in the room. And I'm lightly glazing this color over the gray pastel pencil that was previously applied. I'm drawing in these little lines around this shape with Pitt 273, which is a dark gray. I'm coloring in this shape with the Carbothello 100. And coloring a little one next to it. And I'm going over that with the 435 Ultramarine Blue Light Carbothello pencil. Coloring the little blue shape over to the right as well, and adding some 100 pencil over that to brighten it. I'm added touches of white as needed in the picture. I'm using 435 ultramarine blue light Carbothello to add blue to the water shape on the right hand side, and I'm using a Pitt 273 to deepen the outline on the edge of the water on the right hand side. I'm continuing to color the green down the little area where the water actually seeps out with Pitt Pastel 165 Juniper Green and 174 Chrome Green. I'm using the 750 Carbothello Black to darken that area a little bit. And then I'm coming back in with my Pitt 165 Juniper Green to darken that up a little more. And again, going back to the 750 Black. I'm alternating between the 165 Juniper Green and my 750 Black to darken this area and also give it depth. By darkening it, it makes the water look like it has form. Here I'm using my Conte pencil number 21 green blue to add a little blue color into the shadow. I'm looking around, checking for places that need some darker color. Out the shape of the water with Pitt Pastel 273 warm green. And I'm coloring in this area between the yellow shaped marble and the green marble. I'm also adding some 704 Carbothello gray pencil to the area. Here I'm switching back to the 273 Pitt warm green. It's a little bit darker and a little bit different color than the Carbothello 704. I'm using some 720 Carbothello, which is a lighter gray, to blend the two grays together and lighten the area in the middle, and blending it with my finger. Here I'm adding a little green with the Carbothello 575 leaf green. I'm moving over to the reflection under the yellow marble. I'm using a little leaf green 575 Carbothello there as well, and some gray 704. Now underneath the green marble, I'm using the Conte 37 to add that little yellow-orange reflection. It's an opportunity to add color. I love to use every opportunity to add different colors. And these little touches will really make a difference in your painting. I'm using the Pitt 273 warm green to add more shapes, draw out more lines in my painting. And I'm also using the Carbothello 704. The 704 is like a really warm gray, and the gray green is a green gray, so they work well together. Let's finish up the shadow under the yellow marble. So I'm using 575 leaf green to add green to this area. And I'm going to use the 273 Pitt warm gray to add some gray green to the area. I'm using 174 chrome green to darken the edge of this area. I can also use a darker green, which would be 165 juniper green, to add a yet darker green color. I'm adding gray on top, gray green, with the 172 earth green pit pencil, which is a very nice color, blending the two greens together. Now adding the reflective color from the yellow in the marble with Conte number 37 Indian Yellow. Put in some highlights with your Rembrandt 100.5 white. Always use the edge so I can get a sharp highlight. Adding more highlights and sharpening edges with the 750 black and the white Rembrandt. Adding some white at the bottom. Blend that with your blender, the clean edge of your blender. It's going to carry color into it. So use a clean blender or clean your blender on a paper towel. Just wipe it across to get the color out. Now I'm brightening that white area by putting a layer of Carbothello 100 over the top of it. We're adding another layer, filling in the tooth and making that brighter at the same time. After filling that in, I'm going to use the 435 Ultramarine Blue Light to add that cooler blue color to the left and to the bottom of this shape. Here I'm outlining shapes with the 273 warm green Pitt pencil, and then using my white Carbothello pencil to add bright white highlights on either side of these lines that I previously drew. And I'm glazing over the areas that I just colored in with the white with the 435 Ultramarine Blue Light. I'm adjusting color by glazing in my green, chrome green 174 in different areas to just darken some of these areas. I'm constantly adjusting things as I paint, deciding if it needs to be darker or lighter, and using the best color choice to do that with. I'm using a 750 black to darken some areas, our Carbothello. Just some edges of these shapes. Not a whole lot of black, but just a few touches to add a bit of contrast to some of the shapes that we've already put in. I'm coloring this little area with the 273 warm green. It's where the water trail has gone off of the surface that the marbles are sitting on. Here I'm adding the Carbothello 100 white next to the gray that I put down. Adding a little bit on the outside edge as well. And I will go over those and glaze it with the 435 ultramarine blue light. I'm using a 575 Carbothello to add green color to this bottom area of the reflection under the yellow marble. I'm darkening that a bit with the Pitt 165 Juniper Green. A bit of reflected color with the Indian Yellow number 37 Conte pencil. I also want you to look up at the right-hand side of my painting by the shooter. I decided to, although it's not on camera, I decided to add Mount Vision 544 Midnight Blue in that area. It causes a slight shift of color, and it lightens and brightens that area and draws attention to our main subject, which is the shooter. So be sure and do that. I'm adding some darker greens now with the Pitt 165. I'm also adding more 575 leaf green up next to the yellow marble and around the little white highlights. I'm going to use 704 gray on the other side of the white highlights and join it to the previously colored area where we put gray in. I'm using Pitt 273 warm green to add some gray-green area in between the highlights underneath the blue marble. And here I'm using the Pitt 151 Prussian blue to add some of those blue highlights from the blue marble into that shadow. I switch from the blue to my darker green, which is the Pitt 165 Juniper, to darken that shadow a bit. Here I'm using a bit of the Conte Red No. 3 Vermilion to reflect red down into the shadow underneath the red marble and blend that out with my blender. Modifying that red, I thought it was a little bright with the Pitt 165 Juniper green. I've got my 704 Carbothello to add the gray to the back area of our water. And I'm using the 273 warm green gray Pitt to add color there. And I'm adding a little more 273 Pitt warm green in various areas on our reflections. That just kind of helps to blend in the color and smooth it out. Sharpening up a little line there. Making it a little more even. I've switched to my darker green, 165 Juniper, to darken the greens a little bit. It's kind of, I go back and forth between the dark and the light and kind of balancing the values in the painting. Values is the degree of darkness or lightness in an area. And it's that develops realism that I'm looking for. Now this is my 750 black. I'm going to even up that edge. And I'm adding more 273 Pitt warm green in between these areas of the yellow marble and the blue one. This is 720, which is a lighter gray. So I'm adding that and then blending things with my finger. Adding some bright yellow spots with a Conte 4 yellow medium. Before we were using the Indian yellow number 37, which is kind of an orangey tint. This time we're using the brighter yellow. I'm using a 570.7 Rembrandt Phthalo Blue soft pastel. This is a little bit darker color than the phthalo blue we were using before. You can see it's a little bluer. So I'm putting it on the edge of the water that's on the table. I'm also going to put it outside of the edge of the water as the reflection on the table on which the marbles are sitting. Blending it with my little blender. Now I'm using a darker blue pencil like the Conte number 10 of ultramarine. I'm putting an outline there. And then I'm blending that area a little more. Now here I'm outlining this and adding color with the Pitt 273 warm green. This is going to indicate the reflection and also the texture on the surface of the table on which the marbles are sitting. I'm going to put a little 750 black in that as well. And even up that line. I'm using my white Carbothello pastel pencil to add little tiny marks to indicate the texture. I'm kind of just stippling them along, just individual little tiny marks. Making this a little darker with my 750 black. And I'm adding little light blue marks with the 435 ultramarine light pastel pencil, Carbothello. And now I'm adding a little bit of texture with the 151 Prussian blue Pitt pencil. I'm adding more gray with Pitt 273 warm green on the outer edge of the water that's underneath the marbles. I'm going over the warm green pit with a 720 cold gray, light gray Carbothello pastel pencil. Now I'm using just a little bit of Pitt 165 Juniper Green over the edge of the green, with the green-gray shadow. And I'm going to lighten the back edge of the shadow with the 720 Carbothello light gray pencil. Adding more gray with Pitt 273 warm green gray. I blended the area, and now I'm using the edge of my white Rembrandt 100.5 to add little short stippling strokes. It needed a brighter color there. I'm blending with my finger. I'm putting shadows underneath with my Pitt 165 Juniper Green. And I'm shading this also with 750 black underneath my little marks. And these marks are creating the texture of the countertop. I'm adding some lighter blue ones with the 435 Ultramarine Blue Light. I am continuing to adjust color with the 440 Carbothello Sky Blue and also the dark Juniper 165 Green, and on the blue marble underneath close to where it touches the table I'm using the Pitt 151 Prussian Blue. I'm using my Mount Vision 544 Midnight Blue underneath the waterline at the bottom of the picture to add color, and I'm going to blend it in with a sponge. Just going to carefully blend it so that it's even. It's the same color we used in the upper right quadrant around the shooter marble. It evens up the paper where we may have gotten smudges, and it brightens the picture. It goes well with the surface, which is pastel matte light blue. And I love Mount Visions because they're soft and very good for backgrounds. I'm adding it around to the left side as well, and I'm going to blend that with my blender. Now I'm using the sharper edge of the Mount Vision pastel to add short strokes, light little strokes into the surface, which indicates the texture that's on the surface. I'm continuing to add that color, and now I'm blending it on the right side with my sponge. I'm lightly blending it. I did not make this a solid area on my painting. I'm using the Unison 544 on the very back side behind the blue marble to brighten the area. And I'm going to use my sponge edge very carefully to blend into that. And just blend it out. It looks nice. It draws attention to that area and makes it a little brighter. I'm going to use my pastel to add some additional horizontal little marks to the painting to represent that surface, that textured surface that they're sitting on. And then look over my painting to see if I need to change anything. Thank you for joining me for this project of the reflective marbles, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Only thing left to do is to sign my name. Please visit my website at www.kwit.com for more information and more fun projects.